NASA, one of the most acknowledged space agencies, made headlines all over the world by being the first agency to step foot on the surface of the moon.
No way!
We landed on the moon!
But the moon landing has always been a subject of debate, with mixed opinions from people. Even decades after the moon landing, there are many conspiracies suggesting that we might have actually stepped foot on the surface of the moon. This leads us to the question, was the moon landing fake? And if so, why? The first human-made machine to ever land on the surface of the moon was the Soviet Union's Luna 2. This cosmic rocket was the first ever human-made object that contacted another celestial body. And this was something huge for humanity itself, and created competition between the US and Soviet Union on which country reaches the moon first. In short, the 1960s were a decade of the quest to reach the moon first. The Soviet Union was secretly trying its best to reach the moon first, and developed a rocket called the N-1 for crewed travel to the moon and beyond. The rocket was concealed from the public, and in February of 1969, the Soviet Union's N-1 met a huge accident during its first flight testing, which caused a huge explosion, killing 91 people right on the spot. This showed that the crewed moon landing wasn't an easy task. But the pressure to reach the moon between the two countries was high, and even President Kennedy challenged NASA to reach the moon within the 1960s decade, with only 1 year left. Time was running out when, all of a sudden, NASA left the world in shock.
2, 1, 0, all engines running.
On July 20th, 1969, NASA made headlines all over the world with the news that they were the first space agency to step foot on the surface of the moon. NASA's Apollo 11 mission was successful in reaching the surface of the moon on its fifth attempt, with crew members Neil Armstrong, Buzz Aldrin, and Michael Collins. This made the United States the only country to reach the surface of the moon in a crewed rocket, and it seemed like the US had taken over the world with its capabilities. But soon, people started to realize the plot hole in the success story of the moon landing. A huge debate arose as people had mixed reactions. Some were supportive of NASA making it to the moon, while others were suspicious of it. Things became more bizarre when pictures came out of Neil Armstrong walking on the moon and even placing the US flag over its surface. And this is where people started to see the other side of the success story. This suspicion of people led to the birth of the popular conspiracy, which was the moon landing fake? Did NASA fake traveling to the surface of the moon? One of the most popular reasons why people believe that the Apollo 11 moon landing was fake is because there is no available footage of Apollo 11 reaching the moon, as NASA claims that they accidentally lost the footage. According to NASA, they had accidentally lost all of the footage of the 1969 moon landing. This was extremely bizarre to believe because how come we are able to have millions of years old testaments protected but seem to lose necessary footage that was only filmed a few decades ago? This was the first thing that stood out in the minds of people and made them think that it might be possible that NASA faked traveling to the moon. The images presented by NASA that contained Neil Armstrong walking over the moon's surface also started to make people suspicious, and the reasons did make a lot of sense. The most talked about image of the 1969 moon landing is the image of the United States flag waving on the surface of the moon. But what's surprising is that there is no air on the moon. How come the flag seemed to be waving in the picture? Was it because the flag wasn't even on the moon? Another thing that made people suspicious about the moon landing was the fact that the images that NASA presented to the world of its supposed moon landing had strange shadows in them, which is also bizarre because if the sun was the only light source in space, why weren't the shadows parallel? It seemed that the pictures were taken in some sort of studio just to prove that NASA made it to the moon. People started to wonder, was it that easy to travel to the moon? Despite the Earth's dangerous radiation field, how come the scientists were able to cross the radiation field of the Earth unharmed? Though many scientists try to back this up by saying that the faster you travel through the radiation field, the less harm you face, this doesn't make any sense. Earth's radiation field is extremely dangerous for humans despite their speed at crossing it, which is another reason to believe that NASA must have lied to us. Have you noticed that the pictures presented by NASA of its moon landings do not show a single star shining in the sky? Why is not a single celestial body visible in the picture? This shows that NASA may have mistakenly forgotten to add stars to their studio walls while faking the moon landing. Since it is known that when a rocket reaches a surface, it sorts of disrupts the surface a bit due to high speed and power, how come there is not a single sign of a mark left on the moon by the Apollo 11 rocket showing that NASA actually went on the moon? It seems like the rocket was smooth with its landing and didn't even lift the dirt from the surface. All of this evidence leads us to only one theory. And according to the theory, the moon landing was purposely shot in a studio so that NASA could win the race to reach the moon first. And it worked. Another thing that should be kept in mind is the Vietnam War and the role of the United States in it. The US had invaded the country and dropped way more bombs in Vietnam during the war than the ones dropped in Japan during World War II, and this caused a lot of damage to the country. According to the theory, the US planned to fake the moon landing to not only win back support from other countries, but to also distract the world from its cruel war crimes. This does make a lot of sense since the US always likes to hide its war crimes under the rug and distract the world successfully. It might have been possible that the US faked the moon landing to not only win over the Soviet Union, but also distract the world from the ongoing war. In 1976, Bill Kaysing wrote a book called We Never Went to the Moon, America's $30 billion swindle, which created quite a bit of chaos among the public and for the right reasons. In this book, Kaysing explained why he thinks that the moon landing was staged, and this was the time when people really started to question the authenticity of NASA and America in general. From the pictures to NASA's response to allegations of leaked footage, everything seems suspicious, and if you think that's all, wait till you hear the crazy part of the conspiracy. It is also believed that popular movie director Stanley Kubrick, the one who directed well-celebrated films like The Shining, might have helped NASA fake the moon landing. Take his 1968 film The Space Odyssey into consideration. The film was sci-fi and had amazing special effects for the 1960s. From man-made ships to satellites, everything in the film looks so real that people believe that Kubrick was a big part of the fake moon landing, and this does seem likely. Though these are all theories, and NASA denies all of them, the biggest evidence against the moon landing being real is the fact that we have never really made it to the moon after the Apollo missions. Since the last Apollo mission in 1972, humans have never stepped foot on the surface of the moon, which has made people wonder why. Why did we stop despite having much more efficient technology than before? Though many scientists blame the cost and priority factors for this, it seems bizarre since why isn't traveling to the moon a priority anymore? Shouldn't we use our modern technology to investigate the surface even more? What is stopping us? Is it because we never went to the moon in the first place? It seems that we humans never really stepped on the surface of the moon, and even after 50 years, we are still not capable of reaching the moon. It is likely that we have all been lied to for decades by NASA. If you like today's content, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Do you think that the moon landing was fake? Let us know in the comments below.